That night, the sky was pitch black, dotted with a few faint stars hidden behind gray clouds. The moist air after a light rain made the vast garden of the Marston estate feel cool. The wind whispered through the tall treetops, rustling the old leaves like they were sharing nameless secrets. John Marston stood by the study window, his gray-blue eyes watching the darkness outside. Work, meetings, numbers, and investment decisions piled up throughout the day, leaving him feeling suffocated. Draping a thin coat over his shoulders, he decided to take a walk around the grounds. He had always loved this garden, tended by the most skilled gardeners. It was his pride. The pristine white fountain in the courtyard, rows of roses of various colors neatly arranged, and the clean, mirror-like stone pathways. But tonight, that beauty no longer soothed him. A sense of emptiness crept into his chest. John sighed, his leather shoes gently brushing against the fine white gravel. He walked in silence, ears catching the distant chirping of insects, the wind wafting the scent of freshly bloomed jasmine toward him. But amid that tranquility, a faint movement behind the kitchen drew his attention. A small, nimble figure slipped through the kitchen door. John squinted. It was Naya, the young maid. She was holding a small cloth bag, her movements hurried. Her silhouette darted through the back path and quickly disappeared into the darkness. John was not a suspicious man. Throughout his life, he had always believed in honesty and responsibility. But the sight piqued his curiosity, not out of fear of loss, but because there was something in Nia's hurried, anxious steps. Without thinking much, he quietly followed. His expensive leather shoes gently pressed on the wet grass. The darkness concealed him, and the pale moonlight became his companion, lighting his way. He saw Nia cross the rose garden and then circle behind the wooden fence. A small door lay hidden among the pine trees, an entrance few knew about. Nia opened the door, carefully glanced around, and stepped outside. John followed quietly, maintaining just enough distance to avoid being detected. Each of his footsteps echoed like the quickened beat of his own heart. His initial curiosity gradually turned into something else, an unease. Why did the young maid have to sneak around like that? In the middle of the night, alone, where was she going? The path led to a narrow street behind the estate, where dim streetlights cast a pale yellow glow on the wet pavement. Nia didn't look back. Her steps were quick and confident, like someone well acquainted with the road. John stood in the shadows, silently watching. He didn't know what he was expecting, but he knew he couldn't turn back without finding out the truth. The night wind blew, cold and sharp like a knife lightly grazing his skin. But within John, a faint flame was beginning to ignite. He had stepped outside tonight to escape the emptiness, but now he felt his heart racing faster than ever. What awaited him ahead? Why would a young maid have to sneak away with a small bag of food? The answer could be simple, or not. But he decided that tonight he would not return until he understood the truth. Nia walked quickly along the dark road, her bare feet in worn-out cloth shoes tapping lightly against the damp pavement. Her hands clenched tightly around the small cloth bag, which contained a few pieces of bread, some withered fruit, and a bit of leftover meat. All that remained after dinner at the Marston estate. The cold night wind blew past, but she paid no attention, her mind consumed with thoughts of her two younger siblings waiting at home. John Marston, maintaining a safe distance behind her, walked cautiously, keeping himself hidden in the shadows. It wasn't because he feared being caught, but because he didn't want to startle her into stopping. The night grew darker, and the dim streetlights stretched strange shadows across the wet road. Nia turned onto a narrow street leading to the city's impoverished neighborhood. Dilapidated houses with peeling walls and broken windows crowded together like they were clinging to existence. Weak lights flickered from a few rooms, their pale yellow glow wavering like the fragile breath of life here. John felt the air around him grow colder. He, had grown too accustomed to the luxury, cleanliness, and safety of his estate, almost forgetting that another world existed just beyond the grand gates. Nia's shadow weaved through the narrow alleys, her small hands clutching the food bag to her chest like a treasure. Her steps were hurried, as if she feared that if she were just a moment slower, something terrible might happen. At the end of the alley, Nia stopped in front of a crumbling building with stained walls and windows covered in cobwebs. A rickety wooden door creaked open, and Nia quickly slipped inside. John paused, hiding behind a moss-covered wall. He glanced around. Not a soul in sight. The only sounds were the wind howling through the cracks of the windows and the faint rustle of sewer rats beneath the walls. Through a cracked window, John saw Nia place the bag on a small table in the middle of the room. Two children, a little girl with curly hair and a younger boy, rushed toward her. Their eyes lit up at the sight of the bag. "You're back," the little girl's frail voice called out, hoarse and weak. "Sit down, be good, and let me divide the food," Nia gently replied, her voice soft but hurried. She opened the bag, broke the bread into 3 pieces, carefully handing the largest to her sister, then to her brother. Finally, she kept the smallest portion for herself. The little girl coughed dryly, a harsh, lingering sound that made even John feel uncomfortable outside. "Are you okay, Tiana?" Nia asked softly, her dark eyes filled with worry. The girl nodded slightly, but her pale, hollow cheeks told the truth. Beside her, the younger brother clutched Nia's shirt with his tiny hands. The air in the cramped room was suffocatingly tense. "I spoke to the doctor," Nia whispered, trying to keep her voice calm. "They said we need new medicine, but I still don't have enough money." Her voice trailed off, as if speaking any louder would shatter the tiny hope she clung to. John stood outside, feeling as though his chest was being squeezed. He knew this room had no heating, no comfortable mattress, only a worn-out mat on the floor, a few clothes hanging on a frayed rope. The dim light in the room flickered, casting a faint glow from an old, almost burnt-out bulb. One question echoed in his mind. How could this young girl, with her meager job as a maid at his estate, possibly support 2 siblings in such dire circumstances? How could she maintain that gentle smile for them every time she came home? "I'm sorry, my loves. Just a little longer. I will find a way to earn more money." John stood motionless. A wave of both sorrow and shame washed over him. He had always thought of charity as writing a large check, donating to distant organizations. But here, before his eyes, was a life he had never considered. A life of quiet struggle and silent sacrifice. He turned away, quietly walking back toward the familiar road. His feet felt heavy with each step. Every stride pressed against the cold, damp road. But within him, a quiet flame burned, an unfamiliar feeling he had never known. That night, when he returned to his estate, John Marston couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Tiana's pale, gaunt face and Nia's determined, yet gentle eyes. He realized that he had lived in luxury for too long, so long that he had forgotten the real suffering of others. Sitting by his window, looking out at the silent garden bathed in pale moonlight, he no longer felt at peace. Instead, that silence only reminded him of his own indifference. That night, John Marston couldn't sleep. He sat by his window, watching the pale moonlight cast a quiet glow over the tranquil garden. But in his mind, the image of Nia and her 2 younger siblings replayed like an endless film. The next morning, seated at the long dining table filled with a lavish breakfast, golden fried eggs, crispy toast, fragrant bacon, John found no appetite. The extravagance felt meaningless as he thought of the stale bread Nia had divided for her siblings. He glanced around the spacious dining room, sunlight streaming through the large glass windows, illuminating the intricately carved furniture and expensive paintings on the walls. Yet all of it only deepened his sense of emptiness. "Mr. Marston, is your breakfast all right?" Robert, the butler, gently inquired, noticing his master's unusual silence. "Robert, tell the chef to prepare an extra portion of food. No, not leftovers. Good nutritious food. Pack it so Nia can take it home after work." Robert raised an eyebrow but asked no further questions. He had worked for John long enough to understand that his master always had a reason for his orders. Throughout the day, John struggled to focus. Phone calls, financial reports, and meetings with partners. All of it felt insignificant. His mind remained on Nia, on her ever-gentle eyes tinged with a deep sadness. That evening, as usual, Nia finished her cleaning duties, said goodbye to everyone, and received the food package from the kitchen. She was surprised to find the bag heavier than usual, but didn't question it. Quietly, she walked home along the dark road. John stood on his balcony, watching her small figure disappear beyond the grand gate. Relief mixed with anxiety stirred in his chest. But a few days later, everything took a turn for the worse. When Nia returned to her cramped room as always, she found her two siblings huddled on the old mat. But this time, Tiana, the younger sister, lay curled up, her face pale, her lips dry and cracked. Harsh, rasping coughs echoed painfully in the small room. "Tiana, what's wrong?" Nia rushed to her, placing a trembling hand on her sister's forehead, burning hot. "Sister, it hurts," Tiana whispered, her voice faint, her half-closed eyes dull. Nia panicked. She knelt beside her sister, holding her tightly. The younger brother stood nearby, tears welling in his eyes. "Sis, what's happening to Tiana?" he asked, trembling. "It's okay. I'll take her to the hospital. Stay here and don't leave, okay?" Nia hurriedly wrapped Tiana in a thin coat, then carried her outside. Her small feet stumbled over the uneven stairs of the old building. Outside, the bitter cold wind blew fiercely. Nia ran, clutching her sister close, heading to the nearby clinic. The hospital corridor was crowded, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant and the faint groans of suffering patients. Nia rushed to the reception, tears filling her eyes. "Please, doctor. Please help my sister." "Calm down, young lady. Your sister has a high fever and needs immediate admission." "But I don't have money." "Without an upfront payment, we can't admit her. You may buy fever medicine to stabilize her for now." Nia felt paralyzed. Her hand gripped the pocket of her coat, where only a few coins remained, the little money left after buying food. "Please, I'll pay. Just save her." But the nurse simply shook her head. Nia carried Tiana to the waiting chairs, tears streaming down her face. Her lips trembled. "Tiana, hang in there. I'll think of something." Tiana lay limply in her sister's arms, her breathing weak, her eyes fluttering as if sinking into darkness. John knew nothing of this until the next day, when he noticed the food package meant for Nia still sitting in the kitchen. "Robert, did Nia not take her food yesterday?" "No, sir. She left in a hurry and didn't take it." This unsettled John. He decided to do something he never thought he would: personally visit the neighborhood where Nia lived. He drove through the night, his luxury car standing out among the rundown streets. As he arrived at Nia's old building, he saw the chaotic scene: ambulance lights flashing outside the small clinic nearby. John stepped in, blending into the crowd of patients and relatives. And there he saw Nia. She was sitting outside the emergency room, her head buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Her small shoulders shook with every sob. John walked closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Nia?" She looked up, her tear-filled eyes widening in shock. "Mr. Marston, let me help you." Before Nia could respond, John had approached the reception. "I will cover all expenses. Save that child immediately." In that moment, John Marston changed, not because he was inherently a kind man, but because he couldn't stand by and watch an innocent life slip away when he had the power to do something. John Marston sat in a corner of the hospital waiting room, his gray-blue eyes fixed on Nia, who was sitting near the emergency room door. Her small shoulders trembled, her thin hands clenched tightly together, as if afraid of losing the last shred of hope. After a while, the emergency room door swung open. The doctor stepped out, removed his white mask, and approached Nia. "The girl will be fine. We administered fluids, fever reducers, and antibiotics, but her health is very weak. Without proper treatment and care, this could happen again." Thank you, doctor," Nia sobbed, tears streaming down her young face. John stood up and walked over. Nia looked at him, her eyes filled with shock and worry. "You don't need to worry anymore. I will cover all your sister's expenses," he said gently. But why, sir? I can't repay you," she stammered, her voice shaking. "I don't need you to repay me. I only want your sister to get well." Nia remained silent, her lips quivering, her eyes brimming with gratitude but also shame. In her eyes, John was a wealthy master, while she was merely a poor, insignificant maid. That gap felt like a chasm, and this help only made her feel even smaller. I'm sorry for taking the food. I didn't have any other choice. I already know, John interrupted softly, and I'm not angry. That food would have gone to waste otherwise. I just regret not knowing your situation sooner. Nia lowered her head, unable to say anything else. She still couldn't fully trust, still kept her distance, fearing that this kindness might come with conditions. In the days that followed, John Marston didn't just pay for Tiana's medical bills. He quietly kept an eye on Nia's life. He learned that Nia didn't only work as a maid at his estate. After her duties ended, she took on a job at a small eatery in the neighborhood, where her small hands were always busy with steaming dishes, yet she never had time for a proper meal herself. Some nights, John would drive by the poor neighborhood and see Nia sweeping the floor of an old cafe, her calloused hands scrubbing the tiles. But no matter how tired she looked, she always smiled at customers, always thanked them even for the meager coins they left behind. He saw her stand hesitantly in front of a pharmacy, debating for a long time before stepping in and buying the cheapest medicine for her sister. He knew it was just pain relief, not proper treatment. "Why didn't you tell me about Tiana's condition?" John asked during one of his visits to the hospital to check on Tiana. "I didn't want to trouble you. My job is to clean, not to become a burden." "Nia, you're not causing any trouble at all. If you ever need help, I am always here." Nia lowered her head, staying silent. Pride and self-respect lingered within her, a fragile pride of someone who didn't want to become a burden. John's help wasn't just limited to covering medical bills. He began paying attention to Nia's meals at the estate. He instructed Robert, the butler, to prepare nutritious, well-packaged meals for her to take home. But Nia didn't always accept them. Sometimes she insisted on taking only a small portion, just enough for herself, even though John knew she would end up sharing it with her siblings. "I don't want to trouble the kitchen staff. I just need a little," she would say. "Nia, this isn't about charity. I just want to make sure you and your siblings stay healthy." "Thank you, sir, but I don't want to feel like a beggar." John was taken aback. He had never considered that his kindness could make someone feel humiliated. "Then think of it as a reward for your hard work. Nothing is free, and you've worked very hard." Nia could only bow her head, her eyes welling up, though she tried not to cry. Gradually, John didn't just help Nia in silence, but also tried to understand her life. He discovered that Nia and her two siblings had lost both parents in a car accident 3 years ago. With no other relatives, Nia had dropped out of school to work and support them. "I don't regret giving up school. I just want my siblings to have a better life. But you've sacrificed so much." "If I didn't, who would?" Nia replied with a sad smile. John looked at the young girl before him, a small figure with tiny shoulders, yet carrying the weight of the world. And he realized that kindness wasn't just about offering a helping hand. It was about understanding, about seeing the silent struggles others endure. He began spending less time on work. The numbers on his financial reports no longer excited him as before. Instead, he often visited Nia's neighborhood after work, sometimes just to make sure she and her siblings were all right. He began to know her neighbors, listen to their stories, and realized that the luxurious life he had always considered everything was just a small corner of the world. One evening, he saw Nia and her two siblings laughing outside their cramped apartment. Tiana looked healthier, her cheeks gaining a rosy hue again, and Nia's younger brother ran around them with joyful laughter. John stood from a distance, a gentle smile on his face. That was when he realized that helping others wasn't about earning gratitude. It was about giving others a chance to live happily. John Marston sat in his spacious office, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, illuminating the room filled with expensive artworks and a grand mahogany desk. But amidst the luxury, his mind was no longer occupied with financial reports, tense meetings, or multi-million-dollar deals. In his hands was the draft for establishing a new charity, the Marston Hope Fund, dedicated to helping underprivileged children gain access to education and medical care. "Do you really think this is necessary, sir?" Robert, his loyal butler, asked cautiously. "It's not just necessary, Robert. It's the right thing to do. For years, I've focused solely on making money, but now I want that wealth to bring good to others." John didn't just create a charity. He decided that Nia and her siblings would be the first to receive scholarships and support from this fund. A few days later, in her small, cramped room, Nia stared in disbelief at the letter bearing the red seal of the Marston Corporation. Her eyes scanned the lines over and over. Nia, you and your siblings will receive full support for education and living expenses. Nia looked at John with wide eyes, her face a mix of surprise and doubt. But why are you doing this for me? I can never repay you. You don't have to repay me. I used to think I understood life, but you taught me a lesson more valuable than any book. I want you and your siblings to have the opportunities I had when I was young, the chance to change your lives. Nia was speechless. Her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembled, but she tried to stay composed. Thank you, but I want to earn this. You will earn it, Nia. I believe in you. From then on, Nia's life and that of her siblings changed completely. With John's fund covering the medical costs, Tiana's health improved. Her pale cheeks gradually regained their rosy color. Elijah, Nia's younger brother, went to school, where he studied hard and proudly told his friends, "My sister Nia is the strongest person I know." As for Nia, after completing her high school education, she was awarded a scholarship to a prestigious university. At first, she was nervous and felt out of place in the new environment, but with her determination, Nia soon became one of the top students in business administration. Throughout her years of study, John continued to watch over her from afar. He never interfered with her life, but quietly stepped in whenever she faced challenges. "You didn't just help me study, sir. You helped me find myself," Nia wrote in a thank you letter to John after her graduation. On the day of her graduation, John personally attended the ceremony. He stood at a distance watching Nia in her navy blue graduation gown, her curly hair shimmering under the sunlight, her eyes bright with youthful ambition. He didn't approach her, only smiled with pride. After the ceremony, John sent a letter inviting Nia to work at the Marston Corporation. Not as a maid as she once was, but as an intern in the management department. "You won't just be an employee. You'll be a part of this corporation, just like my granddaughter Alexandra. I want you to bring what you've learned and experienced to help make this place better." Nia couldn't believe her eyes. She had started her journey with nothing, a poor maid at the Marston estate, but now she stood before the opportunity to become a part of the massive corporation. At Marston Corporation, Nia wasn't just an ordinary intern. John deliberately placed her in the project management team, where she worked alongside experienced employees, including his granddaughter Alexandra. At first, Alexandra was indifferent, even somewhat disdainful of Nia. To her, Nia was just the maid grandfather pitied. "Do you really think she can do anything here? A kid from the slums who knows nothing about business." Alexandra scoffed when John mentioned bringing Nia onto the team. "That's something you'll have to see for yourself, Alexandra. Don't judge someone just because of where they come from." Nia didn't have an easy time fitting in. She faced skeptical glances, sarcastic remarks from some colleagues. But just as she had once bravely faced her tough life, Nia didn't give up. She spent time learning, carefully taking notes, always ready to help colleagues, and eagerly listened to any advice given. Gradually, her patience, intelligence, and integrity won over her colleagues. A year later, Nia was no longer an intern. John appointed her as an assistant project manager, and not just that, she also became an advisor for the Marston Hope Fund, managing scholarships for other underprivileged children like she once was. "You've come a long way, Nia." "I'm so proud of you," John smiled, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, sir. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it." "Perhaps, but I only opened the door. You were the one who walked through it and earned your success." Even Alexandra, who once viewed Nia with disdain, gradually changed her perspective. She saw that Nia wasn't just hardworking, but also an inspiring leader, someone who listened and always put others' needs first. John Marston, a man who had spent his life controlling and accumulating wealth, now found joy in giving opportunities to young people like Nia. And for Nia, she didn't just find a career, she found a new family, a mentor, a grandfather figure who always believed in her. If you ever thought that kindness was just the pity of the rich toward the poor, then the story of John and Nia proved the opposite. True kindness isn't about how much you give. It's about how you help others stand on their own feet. And sometimes the richest person isn't the one with a vast fortune, but the one who can give opportunities and see the potential in the smallest of lives.